Benita Lee here. I'm a independent consultant, and with me I have Grant Sernick from Third Wave.
Hi, Benita.
Hi, Grant. How are you today?
I am doing well. I guess this is episode one of what we think is going to be maybe a recurring show, podcast, YouTube channel. I don't
Yeah,
know. Pick
whatever.
your pick your poison.
Exactly. We're just gonna go off script.
Off script. That's exactly right. So maybe just for those of you who care, uh, Benita is a international trade consultant. And Third Wave, the company that I work for and I'm responsible for sales and marketing for, is a technology company that helps companies manage international trade. And we thought that having a conversation about things that are going on in trade, given what's going on in today's world, we are now post-liberation, that it might actually be helpful to the trade community to try to understand what's going on as we collectively try to make sense of stuff. And I have a certain set of experience given where I sit and what I see with our customers, and Benita has a certain set of experiences given what she sees with her customers. So I don't know, Benita, maybe why don't you start us off? Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what it is that you do?
Um, I basically do all the things that global trade compliance customs specialists managers do for their companies, except I work for myself, so I just supplement their services now.
Okay, and you're sort of cutting yourself a little bit short because
Oh,
you also have a lot, by virtue of sort of being external and being a consultant, you have a lot of experience in a lot of different realms in the trade world. And so you might be more expert at understanding a variety of things that are going on in the world.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, this happened during the first Trump administration, is like everybody became experts at USMCA. And out of those experts, how many of them have actually signed a USMCA or gone through all of the criteria that you need to have on a certificate,
well,
or
I think,
even read the regulations?
right. Well, no, and listen, I think that this is the point, and I think that this is really where our conversation as we go through this is going to have enable people to really get a better understanding. I completely agree. What I've seen, I'm amazed over the last 4 weeks how many trade experts exist now.
Mhm.
Uh, it's like
It's
everyone's a
great.
trade expert.
Yeah.
Everybody's read stuff. Um, Most people are reading the same things, and given that they've read an article or two now, they think they understand sort of the broader things. Um, but most people actually don't understand the history, and they don't understand the technical workings of how things actually truly work, right?
Right.
Um, we're going to talk a little bit about that today because there's something going on uh, today which I think most people don't really know or appreciate. I'm excited to explore it because I have a little bit of experience in it, and I think that it's going to make people smarter as they go about sort of their day to day sort of activities. Um, One of my goals of this enterprise is to try to make people that watch us smarter so that they're able to take what we say, apply it to their business, and get better outcomes, right? And if we can do that, and we can help companies get better outcomes, I think you're going to, just by virtue of you being you, you're going to get more clients, and by virtue of me being me and representing Third Wave, we're going to get more clients, and that's sort of, I think, what this enterprise, you and I are doing here. So um, maybe as a start, you can just give an explanation as to what has transpired over the last 48 hours that is really causing chaos. I want to say everywhere.
Well, I think that, as soon as he was inaugurated, and maybe even before, the chaos had already been going through everybody's mind because, like, uncertainty, right? Markets hate uncertainty. Business hates uncertainty. People hate uncertainty. So, like, um, the president has managed to weave his way into all of our hearts and heads through social media and other forms of media, like podcasts, news, briefings at the White House, television, everything. And so I think that, I mean, like, I hate comparing it to the pandemic, but it is kind of like the pandemic where everybody's just like frozen in fear. Like, what do we do? And, leaders of CEOs and CFOs are like, how is this going to impact our bottom line? And then it's like coming through, the stuff flows downhill. So as soon as the leaders of companies start panicking, everyone else is in a panic. So I think that most of it is psychological warfare, and very little of it is what is actually going on. Like, these are just Trump tweets, and, like, yes, there's executive orders that have been signed, but they're all in contention because, like, we still don't know if the courts are going to decide that he can use that International Emergency Act, right? Like, he's doing this all on his own accord. He's saying that we're in a national emergency, and everyone's going to have to start playing by his rules. But I mean, so far,
Well,
we haven't seen what the outcome of these rules are and if he starts enforcing.
okay. So that's a great segue. I mean, let me make a couple points. One is, I think that your comparison to what happened in COVID is actually a really good one, insofar as if you recall back to that period of time, everybody was glued to their television set
Mhm.
waiting for the next thing to be
Announcement.
announced.
Yeah.
And it could have been anything from limitations on your freedoms to trade
Mhm.
and what was going to be allowed and what wasn't going to be allowed and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Um, and there was so much chaos by virtue of the fact that you didn't know what was coming next. And if you didn't know what was coming next, how were you going to plan your business
Right.
to
Or your
accommodate
day.
or your day? Right. And so today, certainly over the last, I want to say 4 to 8 weeks, I guess that takes us back to inauguration almost, but there have been daily announcements
Mhm.
that go anywhere from a proclamation, which doesn't really do a whole lot, to an executive order, which does do a lot, to changes in law, which also does a lot. And those have, the consequences of each of those are far reaching, yet oftentimes unclear. So what I wanted to sort of, one of the things that I thought was relevant to talk about today was sort of the mechanics of what happens um, so what happened 48 hours ago, which you sort of touched on but didn't go into, is Liberation Day happened 2 days
Mhm.
ago. And
I
um,
watched it.
right. And so Liberation Day was Trump's big announcement of what he was
Mhm.
calling reciprocal tariffs on basically the entire world.
And I
And
honestly, I viewed that as reality TV.
okay, but I guess my point is it wasn't, right. And he signed two executive orders
Mhm.
that we'll put in the show notes. And so on Wednesday, April 2nd, he released two executive orders with two fact sheets that basically did two reasonably comprehensive things. The first was that he instituted by executive order duties on virtually the entire world
Mhm.
that were significant.
Even down to,
Um,
like, countries that have, like, populations of
you know,
4,000 people.
yes. So that was, that changed the nature of trade in the in global trade, but certainly trade with the United States.
It
And then,
changed the perception.
well, okay, so we'll talk about that. Let's come back to that point. The other thing that it did was and this got very, very little play in the media, is the other executive order removed the de minimis exemption.
Mhm.
And that is going to have equally significant implications or consequences that need to be unpacked. And so we can talk a little bit about that as well. So I want to understand why you think the first executive order, which was implementing tariffs to basically everyone,
Mhm.
why you're not certain that is as consequential as I think it is.
Okay. Well, first of all, like, did anyone's day change drastically after the announcements and even like after implementation? Like, has anyone's day changed? I don't think so. Like, you're still doing
Well,
the same things that you need to do.
okay, so I would say from a certain analysis that could be right, but from a different analysis, I think that's wrong. So let me walk through the consequences or the set of things that happen after an executive order.
Okay.
Okay, so to create change. So a president will issue an executive order. It could be a law, it could be an executive order, whatever that is, and that is an official document that directs various federal agencies to do things.
Right.
Okay,
I
and
think
so
we should
he
explain to Canadians that that's like an order in council.
okay, right. Okay, and so now that an executive order has been issued to
Mhm.
CBP, CBP is basically border protection, customs and border protection. In Canada, that would be equivalent to CBSA. That they now have marching orders to go operationalize the executive order.
Right. So it needs to
Okay,
go
and
into
there
like
are
the Canada Gazette.
right. And so what will happen is the executive order is released, and then the next thing is there will be a federal registry entry that takes the executive order, provides better clarity, and that's an announcement to sort of the world that this is happening. The Federal Registry is public. And then CBP is going to take that and they have to really operationalize it and get it instituted such that it can be executed with the trade.
Right.
Okay, and so there's an interim step that happens after the Federal Registry where it's an explanation of what's going to happen, but it still isn't enough detail in order for people being really the customs brokers and
Mhm.
or people to understand what customs brokers are going to do their job.
Mhm.
And so what happens is down even further in the trenches, CBP issues what is known as a CSMS, which is I can never remember what CSMS stands for. And it is the operationalized information as to how this exactly is being executed, from duty rates, changes in duty tables, and so on and so forth, which then allows it gets executed. The CSMS gets executed in ACE, which is the portal into the government that basically customs entries get filed.
Mhm.
And customs brokers are able to download their data tables from ACE and upload it into their ABI system, so that their ABI systems, which is their tool that can interface with ACE, are
Okay.
operating on the same sets of data. Okay.
Okay.
So my point is while you're saying for the most part nobody's day has changed,
Mhm.
that's more a function of, yeah, nobody's day's changed because it's still trying to work its way down through the system
Okay.
to be operationalized. Now here's the problem, and this is a significant problem today, and this is what I spent most of my day doing.
Okay.
The tomorrow is ground zero for a whole host of shipments. So up until tomorrow, what the executive order said was, if you are on the water, or if you have already started your voyage,
Mhm.
then these new duties do not apply to you.
Right.
But come April 5th, which is tomorrow, 12:01 tomorrow or tonight, tomorrow morning,
Tonight
right?
at midnight,
Okay, at midnight, if
when my carriage
you
turns into a pumpkin.
your carriage is going to turn into a pumpkin and the new rules apply.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, for ocean, it's still, I want to say your statement is true insofar as that ocean shipment, wherever it's coming from, isn't coming for the next 4 weeks. Okay. So you don't have to necessarily deal with the consequence of the fact that your product now is subject to a set of duties. But
Yeah, I
what if you
wonder.
are what if you are operating trucking shipments
Mhm.
or air shipments?
Yep.
Okay. The new duties are supposed to apply starting at 1201.
Right.
Now, what if so as it stands right now, it is 4:20 Eastern time, almost
Okay.
the end of the working day on Friday,
Right?
and we do not have a CSMS message as to what is happening. So, which means that nobody on the technology side or on the
Mhm.
trade or like on the customs brokerage side is able to apply the set of rules that are
Mhm.
supposed to go into effect by
Which
executive
are
order tomorrow.
which are unclear to begin with.
Oh, exactly. Okay. So this creates a very, very significant problem. So our customers
Mhm.
we've been on the phone all day with them, trying to explain to them that basically, and they know this, except it's still, as you said, this is psychological warfare. There is some benefit to just talking about
Right.
it, right?
Yeah, you're
Um,
venting. It helps.
it helps, but the simple fact is that we don't know what we're supposed to do collectively
No.
to keep goods moving. So one of our big customers, they do a lot of air, right? And
Mhm.
their goods are moving basically daily. They're an aerospace company. And if their goods are stopped at the border, that could mean that commercial jets are grounded. Okay, this
Right.
is a big problem, right?
Mhm.
Now, there are some people that actually their primary concern is what are the new duties that I need to pay. Our customers, generally speaking, don't necessarily, I mean, do they care about it? Yes. What are they more concerned about? They're much more concerned about their products being held at the border because
Mhm.
nobody knows what to do to get these goods
Exactly.
cleared.
Well, just like
And
when he implemented de minimis like a month ago.
okay, so
Like,
go
he took
go
that
go on
away.
about that.
He took that away, and so, like, post offices had, like, a whole bottleneck of packages, small packages. De minimis is, like, a rule that has been put into place, like, probably for 50 years. As that said, there are some goods that come into the country where they're under a certain threshold, so for now, it was $800, and for those, you don't have to do, like, a formal entry, and couriers or the post office can just have a like list of low value shipments that just all go in together in a consolidated form and
So it was
nobody.
just, sorry, not to interrupt you, but it wasn't just that it was an informal entry, which we can talk about, but it was also duty free.
Right,
Most importantly, it was duty free,
right,
right?
because duty wouldn't apply until you hit that $800 threshold.
Right. Yeah, and so that's really significant, right? Basically, there are a whole host of companies that exist today, most notably Shein and Temu, that
Mhm.
are have basically totally disrupted the marketplace, usurped Walmart and Amazon by reorganizing their supply chains to move to basically do, it's not same day delivery, but it's pretty close to same day delivery from China, right? All you have to do is order from China, keep it under $800. They're going to deliver to you duty free in the States.
Mhm, and
And
for a while, it took a while to get from China, but I think in the last 12 to 24 months, they've been putting their wares in warehouses in Canada and the US. There was like a stat that came out that 60%, 40% to 60% of all warehouse space was owned by small retailers from China. So
mm,
now when you're ordering off their sites, and their sites are so sophisticated that they only push you that stuff that's in the warehouses in America, right? So you're
so
seeing those goods that you can get a great deal on. And the reason you can get a great deal on them is because they're already in the country. So they just ship it from Mississauga or Vancouver or Texas or Houston, what or Texas is Houston, but wherever these warehouses are.
Mm. Well, and also, I mean, usually it wasn't, I would say probably it wasn't Houston insofar as part of the goal was to get around the 25% tariffs that
Mm-hmm.
were on Chinese goods, right? So back in 2018, Trump instituted the 301 tariffs, or the Trump tariffs part one, which instituted 25% on goods from China. And so now that made goods from China expensive, right? Well, it
Mm-hmm.
did, unless you were buying stuff that was less than $800 in the United States, in which case what they could do is they could send stuff to Canada or to Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
right? No duty paid, or very minimal duty, certainly not the 25% tariffs that the US was charging,
Mm-hmm.
warehouse them in Canada or Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and then bring them in on what was called the Section 321 or Type 86 entry, which was a de minimis entry, and you actually didn't have to pay duty on them,
Right.
right? That was a big deal. And so what Trump did on Wednesday was he basically eliminated
Mm-hmm.
the de minimis, which means now that type of business is going to, well, change quite dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't know what the consequence is, but you can imagine that if everything now is at least 25% more expensive, that's significant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to change. Like there were whole businesses that were set up around these Type
Yes.
86 entries, right? So in Vancouver and in Tijuana and whatever, there were whole industries set up around warehousing goods to ship into the United States under a Type 86 entry, right? And so there are two things are changing. One is that to enter these goods now does require an informal entry, whereas before it was just a manifest entry. So that's a technical distinction. But the informal entry now requires duties, and it's zero. And so CBP has a really significant problem, right? So one of the things that people don't necessarily understand is back in I want to say it was 2016. I think it was 2016. That was when Obama raised the de minimis threshold from $200 to $800. Why did he raise the de minimis threshold? It was because the processing of low value, what they considered was low value entries, was so burdensome, and the transaction volume was so high. This was onerous on CBP to be able to do all of this. In order to relieve the burden of the volume of shipments, he raised the rate to $800 to just basically say, okay, here's some relief, CBP. You don't have the systems, you don't have the capabilities, or whatever. Okay, well, Trump didn't bring it back. Well, so since 2016, what's happened? Oh, like small parcel and like e-com has exploded.
Yeah.
So whereas before they were doing tens of millions or maybe even hundreds of millions of shipments a year, now we're into the billions of shipments a year that are small parcel, right? Imports. Okay, well that's a problem. And then beyond that, now Trump has reduced it not from 800 back to 200. He's going 800 to 0. There is no such thing as a de minimis shipment in the United States anymore.
No.
Okay, so what now?
Big bottlenecks at the post office, and FedEx and DHL and UPS are all like, what the hell and where the hell, and everything's gonna be stopped. Just like the trucks at the border, the planes on the tarmac, the ships at the ports. And instead of the pandemic, I'm going to use this analogy, is like 9/11.
Well, okay, so it almost is, right? Stuff is stopped. And one of the real challenges is that these small parcel carriers don't have the warehouse space to basically hold this stuff as the government tries to figure out, what are we doing? Like this is really significant. And so when you put sort of these two things together, you have the new duties that are being implemented across basically the entire world. And then you have the elimination of the de minimis, which is also imputing a heck of a lot of duties. And just by the way, while we're on this topic, you and I were talking last night about what like how this stuff works on informal entries. And one of the points that I think is important for everybody to understand on informal entries is that duties have to be paid immediately. Well, so if your goods that were being ordered, let's say you were ordering off of Amazon, right? You're ordering something and it is an import entry. You were expecting it to be duty free. Amazon will contract with UPS to move the goods and clear the goods. Something like
Right.
UPS, FedEx, they're using everybody, right? Okay, well, now all of a sudden it has to be entered on an informal entry, and it's subject to duties that wasn't expected, and
Mhm.
the duties have to be paid immediately. Who's
Well,
going to do that?
I saw that happen, like I told you, like, I ordered my spoiled child collagen. Yeah, it's a real thing, guys, like, it's not just, like, a fake ad on your Instagram. Um, so it's been coming. It comes every month. I pay a certain price. It arrives at my door. But during that whole de minimis fiasco, like a month ago, somebody at either the customs broker that whoever the shipper was used, I think it was FedEx. I really do. I think it was FedEx. Um, they decided, oh yeah, like I'm supposed to do something different with this, obviously, because it's under $800. So they classified it as leather for some reason. Didn't even like call the manufacturer or the shipper to find out what it was. They just classified it something. And then all of a sudden a slip arrives at my door and says that there's a package for me, but there's a duty involved. And so I have to go pick it up. I go pick it up. And that's how I find out that they've classified it wrong. And I'm paying like $25 a bottle extra. I'm
Right.
like, this is so weird. It's like somebody like decided, okay, like I'm supposed to do something different here. I'll just make up some rules. $25 sounds good. And I'll classify it as something that it's not. Yeah, I'll do that. And so I
Well,
get
and
the
that
feeling that that's going to cause a lot of that. And so people are going to just reject their packages, which is going to be a
uh,
whole new other fiasco.
that is so. I think that's exactly what's going to happen and cause a knock-on effect
Mhm.
of just trouble after trouble, right? So the my I guess my point is that this is like what happened on Wednesday is significant, like really, really significant, and it's going to have real world consequences, really across the board for a whole host of different reasons. And um, maybe we could switch tacks just in closing, because we've been running for about half an hour, and
Yeah.
I don't know that we want to go much longer than this. But one of the things, and maybe we can sort of set the stage for sort of the next time we get together and have this chat, is the sort of the consequence for businesses, and um, how should they really be thinking about sort of the new world. And the thing that I sort of realized, which I haven't heard anybody really talk about, is how Canada and Mexico are unbelievably well positioned today to uh, to basically kill it as it relates to commerce in the United States. So one of the things that didn't happen and isn't, and listen, you and I both live in Canada, and we have a prime ministerial race going on right now. And I can tell you zero candidates for prime minister have talked about this, is that Canada is very, very well positioned to dominate trade with the United States, and from a manufacturing perspective, that basically Canada still has a cheat code into the United States that is not applicable in other countries, even ones that have a free trade agreement. So, for instance, U.S. Korea they have a free trade agreement.
Mhm.
That trade agreement is maybe still in force, but the duties on Korea, I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, they're going to apply these IEEPA duties. And so, whereas before you were importing at 0%, now you're importing at 34% or whatever the value is for Korea. If you were there's a Israel free trade agreement, and I don't know what the duty. I think Israel is maybe at 12% or 10% or whatever it is, but you were at 0 and now you're at 12%. In Canada, you are still free if you fall under USMCA.
That's right.
And so that is okay. Yes, automotive is excluded from that for the most part. It's really OEM and tier one or like suppliers are paying a higher duty, and there was a certain set of rules, but we don't need to go into that exactly right now. But if you are not automotive and you are not energy, you are still allowed to import into the United States for Canadian made goods into the United States duty free. That is significant, and by virtue of what is going on with everybody else in the space, that makes Canada exceptionally favorable as a place to do business. So I would expect manufacturing should start to pop up in Canada by virtue of the fact that if you manufacture in Canada, you will be able to import, at least under the current rules that are in place today, at duty free, provided that you meet the requirements of USMCA. And those requirements are not insignificant. We're going to talk, I think maybe next time we should talk about sort of what that means and what that is. And you have a lot of experience in this space. But that's a significant thing. The same applies to Mexico to a certain extent. And so until the USMCA gets renegotiated, these rules are in place. And I would expect that they're going to persist even under the new negotiation that is invariably going to happen within the next 2 years. I don't know. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, no, I understand it differently where if your product or good is USMCA qualified, that 10% doesn't apply to you. Like it's only if you're good in the energy sector or in like potash or in auto where it doesn't apply, where it doesn't qualify for USMCA. That's where you're going to get the.
No, I think you're misunderstanding. At least from what I understand.
Okay.
OEM, so fully assembled automobiles and light trucks are subject to 25% duties.
Okay.
And similarly, any, I can't remember what it is, engines, transmissions, things of that nature, so major auto components are also subject to 25%, with the exception that for US originating parts, or, so if you have an automobile, fully assembled automobile, let's say in Oakville, Ontario, or something like that, right?
Okay.
So you have a Ford plant in Oakville. Let's say that car is worth $10,000. If you can substantiate that $8,000 of that $10,000 is U.S. origin goods,
okay,
then you get to subtract that from the overall value of the car and only pay the 25% on the 2,000,
okay,
not U.S. origin.
Yeah, that's interesting because that flies in the face of USMCA.
Correct, and that was the big deal. That's why Mark Carney and Trudeau and everybody were making a big deal of it. And it persists, right? That problem still persists, and which is why Carney who is one of the who is currently our prime minister and running for prime minister again in the next few weeks. He is making a big deal of this. The auto sector in Canada is a big deal from a manufacturing perspective. Correct, but and energy, even though that is ought to be under USMCA, is also subject to 10%. Right, so natural gas, crude oil, any of the pipeline stuff that we're sending, and I think potash is included in that.
In the 10%.
In that. Okay, but if it falls outside of those categories, outside of energy, potash, automotive, if it falls outside of those things, USMCA is still in effect, 0%. And so that presents a cheat code. Now, the consequence of it, So, what a lot of people don't understand. So there's a lot of trade. I think it's only like 40% of trade between the United States and in Canada, or Canada and the United States,
Okay.
is done under USMCA. And you might ask, why would you not use USMCA to move your goods? Well, the answer to that is, well, if you are at 0%, if you deal in commodities that are 0% or a low duty rate, say like 2%, 1%, 2.5%, something like that. So you have a question that you have to ask on the margin, is like, you importing under USMCA, as you can speak very, very well to, is a very big burden administratively on your organization, right?
It can be.
You need to keep records and
Mhm.
get USMCA certs or country of origin certs and so on and so forth. And we're going to talk more about this in a future episode. But the challenge of managing the administration can be high, and the consequence, were you to go under audit by CBP, mostly you could be audited by CBSA in Canada or the Mexican authority, but the consequence of it can be actually quite high. If they were to audit you and there were findings, then you're
Mhm.
subject to penalties, duties, interest, penalties, and so on and so forth that were
Mhm.
unpaid, and that could be very consequential, right?
Mhm.
So if you have zero duty rate, there's almost no reason to do it under USMCA. But if you
Yeah.
have a low duty rate, and the vast majority of goods that move back and forth have a very low duty rate,
I think
why
people are,
would you
yeah, they're just not aware enough of the rules, and so they don't want to take that risk because there's
right?
audit risk.
There's risk. Okay, but now if the question is, okay, well, it's not 0% or 2%, it's 25% or 27%
Mhm.
if you're not under USMCA. Okay, well, that changes the game dramatically, right?
Mhm.
And so
So what
now,
would prevent, like, I disagree with the cheat code. Like, I don't understand why someone that was investing, like, with mining or any resource industry, yes, like invest in Canada because that's where the resource lies.
mhm,
But why would, like,
why would you want to manufacture in Canada?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, okay,
Like,
so
what other,
imagine. So okay, so imagine China. China has, in the United States, if you were to import components into China, you're paying, I don't even know what the duty rate is anymore. So like you're going to stack up the 25% 301 from 2016 plus 20% from something plus 30 something percent. Like I don't even know what we're at anymore, but it's a lot. Anything from China is a lot, right? So
right.
you import, instead of importing into the US and paying the duties on that, you import into Canada all of your components. You assemble that in Canada. You have a tariff shift in Canada. It now is a Canadian made good, and you can now import that into the United States duty free,
Okay. So
USMCA,
are these going to be
right?
Canadian laborers or Chinese laborers, or where are these
Well, you
laborers?
expect them to be, it would be a Canadian business, right? Canadian manufacturing business,
Who would
right?
they employ?
Canadians. Why wouldn't they employ Canadians?
Why wouldn't they just bring Chinese people so they can pay them lower? Like, why
Oh,
why
but
would they
how,
want to why would they want to pay more per hour per widget?
because you don't have a choice, right? The alternative is to manufacture in China at a lower price, but at 75% or 70% duty,
Okay.
right? So right, like China's advantage was always a labor advantage,
Mhm.
right? You pay your people less.
Mhm.
Okay, well, and they do. Okay, but Canadian workers are pretty efficient and can run a pretty sophisticated manufacturing facility. And if they get to import goods uh, without paying duty and a significant duty, then it makes Canada very appealing. Similarly,
Yeah.
it makes Mexico even more appealing, right? Which
Yeah.
is why they have all the
I don't know
maquilas.
about that. I think there's going to be like a lot of foreign temporary worker permits going on in the next
Well,
little
maybe,
while.
except Canada's basically shut that program down, right? So it's going to be Canadian workers, and um, so anyhow, like, there's going to be some regulating factor that's going to be going on in the marketplace as it relates to what goes to Canada, what goes to Mexico. There's benefit probably for why you would choose one versus the other. But
Mhm.
my point overall is that it seems as though Canada ought to be well positioned in the new world, provided nothing changes, right? And I don't, again,
I
for
think
what it's worth. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
no. Yeah, I'm like with you for like energy and then mining critical minerals. I'm with you for those like huge industries, but manufacturing, I don't buy it.
Okay, well, we're gonna
Yeah,
see.
we're gonna talk
I
about it.
think
It's gonna be an interesting conversation.
it's gonna be interesting to see how things carry on, and we haven't gone into, and what I'd love to talk about is tariff engineering and
Yeah, like I
FTZs and different ways that you
yes.
can organize supply chains to to sort of capitalize on this new world. Here's what's clear, at least to me: there are going to be winners and losers, and if you aren't interested in playing the game, any of these games, you are a loser. Okay, you are going to lose.
Mhm.
So, if you're in business
Gotta get some
and
strategies in place.
you
Gotta
got
get
to
some
come up with some
planning in
strategies,
place. Gotta get some
and
resources.
you got to get some resources. And so
Gotta get some
that's what
software.
got to get some software. So that's what you and I are going to do on this show. I think we're
Yeah.
going to talk about
It's a
these
great
things,
pilot.
and
We're
we'll
gonna
see what.
disagree. We're gonna agree. We're gonna bring our knowledge together and, try to piece the pieces of the puzzle together and see like if, we can be players of this game.
I couldn't agree more. I think that even like our disagreement is a good thing, and
Mhm.
we're going to try to, like, we are
It's
living
not
in a
hard to
very.
disagree with you, Grant.
I know, right? So this is like we are living through a very, very complicated time, and
We
the
are.
trying to figure out how this is going to go is very, very challenging.
Mhm.
And if you and I can work through some of these ideas and bring people along with us as
I
we
think
do it,
so.
I think it's going to provide value to people. So let's see what happens. I'm thrilled that we're doing this,
Yeah, me
Benita.
too. It's gonna be really fun.
And so um, maybe we sign off now. Have a great weekend. Things are going to be very different next week, and I'm almost certain of that. And
Yeah.
maybe we'll regroup and have another discussion and see what happens.
Okay, I'll play the countdown so that